Hello, everybody. This is Tony Doolin, Dean of the Honors College. And thanks for the students we have for joining us. I think this is our third virtual Dean and Friends. And of course, we're super excited to have Eric join us. And it's a little unusual because Eric is in Louisiana. And so it's hard for him to come to campus for Dean and Friends. So the nice thing about virtual Dean and Friends is our friends don't have to travel nearly as far. So we're super excited to have him here. So Eric is also a graduate of the Honors College in OSU. He graduated with his HPS in chemical engineering in 2000, and then he also has earned an MBA from Tulane University. But he's worked at Chevron since he left OSU, but he's had a number of different roles. So he's worked in manufacturing, he's worked in research, commercialization, and he's been in Louisiana, in Texas, and in California. And I'm pretty sure I've visited him in all of those locations except for Louisiana. So I guess sometime, Eric, I'm going to have to get down to Louisiana. He's had the opportunity to lead his part of the organization through a lot of challenging issues, and as you can all imagine, the last several months have been particularly challenging. And so today he's joining us to talk a little bit about managing through a crisis, but then he's also open, I assume, to any questions that you might have about his career, kind of what he's done since he left OSU at Chevron. Eric, do you want to take it from here?
Yes, thanks. I was just making some notes. So yeah, thanks Tony for the introduction, and thanks Kevin for setting this up virtually. We were going to try and do it in person when I went out at the end of May for our Board of Regents meeting, and try and tie it to that visit to Corvallis. I love going back to campus, and I think I missed the trees and the hills and the mountains the most, being down here in flat Louisiana. So just at a high level, I guess my role here at the plant, it's a small special chemical plant. We have about 400 employees and 200 contractors on site. We run 24/7. We produce a wide variety of special chemicals that we blend together, and we use those chemicals in a lot of different applications, but pretty much anything that requires lubrication. So we'll package these special chemicals into what we call blends, and we'll sell them to lubricant companies that'll make a finished oil, and we'll eventually deliver that finished oil to an end user. And that end user could be putting it on a shelf at Walmart for someone to buy and pick up and change the oil in their car, or a quick change, a lube quick change. A farmer who needs special lubricants for his tractors, goes into chainsaws, and recreation vehicles like four-wheelers, as well as jet skis, snowmobiles, motorcycles. I mean, you name it, anything that moves in the world needs lubrication, and we tailor our chemicals to help enable those products to perform better, whether that's getting more fuel economy in terms of, which is a cost benefit as well as an environmental benefit, making the hardware last longer, allowing new hardware to be developed. So a big thing that the car manufacturers are doing, just as an example of trying to drive for higher performance, they have to drive the temperatures up in the engines and the pressures up in the engines and get the tolerances down on the hardware. And when you do that, you have thinner layers of lubricant as a protection. And so we need to have special chemicals to provide wear protection in those circumstances. And so part of our we develop a lot of new chemistry and a lot of new technology that we bring to market to help enable some of these other applications. And so we make those here. We run 24/7, I mentioned, and with that comes a lot of operating challenges and opportunities. We have a lot of chemicals on site, and so I'll talk a little bit about just how we manage that. And you can imagine what you guys are going through right now, adjusting to life at school in the COVID environment, and going virtual all of a sudden, and trying to figure out what that means for your grades. What does that mean for going to school? What does that mean for getting credits? What does that mean for the fall semester? And you have all these uncertainties. And the same for you. We have those same uncertainties for our workers in their personal lives, and we have it for certainly our business. And trying to manage all of that is a lot. So I'll just put a like caveat or disclaimer in here that I'll speak from my own personal views of leadership and not Chevron Corporation's views. So just to state that kind of clearly. We manage through crisis a lot in a chemical plant or a processing environment. We have temperatures and pressures and chemical hazards, and so it's not an unusual thing for us to have we have a pretty, I guess the way I'll say is we're used to managing different situations, and we have structures in place that allow us to do that. So we have a crisis management team, just sort of a leadership team, kind of looking broad across any type of issue that should arise at the site. We'll be thinking about how to communicate with the public, how to communicate with our employees, what resources do we need that we don't have, what resources are not available that we typically have, what is the priority that we need the team to work on in terms of, is it a containment issue, is it a health issue, and so we kind of think at a high level and prioritize the business, and work also with authorities, and depending on the case, maybe working with the local fire department or the Homeland Security or the Coast Guard, and there's a lot of different government agencies that we need to partner with. So in the COVID case, it's really kind of an interesting and a tough challenge for us. And I'll say a lot of the issues we're used to managing are with inside our fence. They're native to the business. So by the nature of doing chemical reactions, we have to have raw materials, we have to react in the temperature or pressure, and with that comes some hazards, and we do a really good job managing those hazards. But in the case of this virus, it's not a hazard that's inherent to work. So there's nothing at our facility that, or like it's at the university there, that makes this issue when you're only on site. And so the challenge is actually quite the opposite. They have viruses everywhere outside of our facility, and people bring it into us. And once it comes into this facility, we need to manage or mitigate any spreading or contamination between folks. And so it's been an interesting experience and challenge as we go through this. As you can imagine, we are no more informed about COVID than I would say the university was, or anyone else for that matter. The university may have some, to their benefit, may have a lot of contacts and experts in the field of, whether it's biology or contacts with OHSU, and some maybe deeper expertise. But so they'll certainly lean on some experts and get some expert opinion as they go. And we're trying to do the same in Chevron. But so some of the things, I guess, just in terms of kind of how do we manage through this period, we're using our similar structure. So one of the key things that we manage here in New Orleans area, if you can imagine, is hurricanes. And we have a pretty good system set in place. And in fact, it's this time of year right now that we start preparing for hurricane season, which starts on June 1st. And so we never want a hurricane, but they're part of nature, and we got to live with them. And we certainly hope they avoid the New Orleans area. But so we have a pretty good structure in place for that, and we're leveraging a lot of that structure to deal with COVID. And it's a similar type of situation where a hurricane impacts the broader community. It also impacts our site, it impacts our employees, and COVID's a lot like that in a sense. So in the hurricane, sometimes we can't our site might actually be okay, but we can't get workers to our site. And with the pandemic, we have sometimes spouses or employees who are impacted and can't come to work for potentially weeks on end. And some high-risk employees have been out for months now, and are not going to be able to return until this pandemic kind of gets past some threshold that we have yet to determine or define. And so one of the challenges around workers, how do we enable workers to get to the site? How do we enable them to be safe while they're here? How do we enable them to be safe while they're at home to the extent that we can as a business? Either through resources we can provide or education we can provide. So a couple of things around that. And then Another thing is learning, right? And so I think I always tell people when you go to school, and in a lot of ways it doesn't matter what major you're in. One of the things you learn to do while you're in the university is you learn how to learn. And you don't know what challenges you're going to come across in whatever field or job you end up, or career path you end up going down. And you're always going to have to go figure things out, because there aren't a lot of jobs that are just repeat. You just learn it in routine and you go over and over and over again, right? Most of those things are being automated and going out, so a lot of what you're going to be tasked with in the future is unknown stuff. And how, where do you find resources? Who do you trust for your resources? How do you go figure out what you don't know, so you can solve problems and keep things moving, whether it's a business or a nonprofit or educating students for that matter. So I'd say one of the big challenges for us has been trying to study everything, learn everything, and then figure out how that applies to the business. We certainly are leveraging a lot of government agencies, as you can imagine, like the CDC and the World Health Organization are the two primary that we're utilizing. But there's a lot of nuances that you encounter that they're not going to be able to speak to, and what safeguards we put in place are really particular. The effectiveness of those safeguards can be particular to the work that we're trying to do, and there's no way for a government to know all the different types of work that are encountered, or situations that are encountered, that people have to go through. Some of it's in some of the more populated areas. It's not the case here where we're at, but even like commuting to work is a problem because of mass transit. People take buses and trains, and I know in France we have a lot of colleagues in France for my business, and that's one of their challenges. So their commercial offices are all shut down because of that. In the plant environment, we tend to commute by car, and it's less of an issue. But we did have employees carpooling, and we had one employee who was tested positive, and then we had to quarantine the person he carpooled with. And those are something we didn't think about. We didn't think it was that common here in New Orleans compared to like California, where the traffic is really bad and everybody carpools. Much more common there. And so all these, we get tripped up a lot. And how do you respond to that? How do you overcome each little rock that gets thrown your way, or trip point you come across? So certainly there's a lot of perseverance that needs to go into managing through this time, and I guess trying to act early and not waver along the way. You tend to second guess yourself a lot, and that's one of the challenges that I think leaders have trying to deal with this is, am I doing too much? Am I not doing enough? How do I know what I don't know? And am I getting the information I need to manage this effectively? Am I communicating that information effectively? And so one of the earlier challenges we had was communication. So a lot of our workers are shift workers, and all the office workers tend to be from home. So the initial communication was really geared towards the folks who are having to come into the plant. Why do I need to come into the plant? Is it safe for me to come into the plant? What are you doing to protect me? And we went through a rash of positive cases, and there was a lot of turmoil, I would say, in the workforce. And so we had to figure out how to overcome that in terms of communication. So it was a lot of personal communication, which is, and how do you trying to balance that, because we're trying not to be close together. And so we don't want a lot of people going to talk to a lot of people. But we felt, and you have to weigh a lot of times the pros and cons, right? So is it better to have a good conversation and let people get things off their chest, and also for you to communicate in person versus the risk of you potentially exposing them or them exposing you? We also try to get more buy-in from the workforce as well. So we try to find leaders in the workforce who are well respected at kind of the working level, and we bring them on board with us. So for us, we're a union site, so we're leveraging the union leadership and kind of communicating a lot more detail with them. And then they've been a real good advocate for communicating them to the workforce and explaining that, hey, we got to start doing temperature checks. And yes, we don't normally want the company to do temperature checks on us, but in this case, it's the right thing to do, and we support them doing that. And then who does that work, and what do you do with the temperatures? Do you record that information? And so just lots of little details along the way. So, I'll say the other thing is that obviously we have to do all this while running the business. And so that's another thing that we're always cautious of is it's a big distraction for the workforce. And you can imagine they're running chemical reactions and a lot of procedures, unloading chemicals and loading products. And we got to make sure we have the right frame of mind as we're doing those activities and not overly worried or anxious about virus. So that we can make sure we do those safely. And so we're also trying to find time, build in some downtime where people can talk about what's going on in the news, what's going on in New Orleans, what's going on in the world around the pandemic. And so we try to build in some downtime that way and give up on some of our business plan commitments for the year as well and try to readjust and prioritize. So we make sure we're clear what's important. Whether, safety for us is always number one. After that, we got to meet our customer commitments. And then, and third, we try to turn a profit by doing all those other things. And, so we try to make sure we're clear with the priority with the workforce as well. So back to the structure a little bit, we do have sort of a working team. We have what we call an incident management team. That's a tactical team that we'd say, hey, go figure this problem out for us and report back to the crisis management team and any recommendations you need, any resources you need, and then we'll help kind of manage that or endorse your recommendations or we'll give you a feedback as well. So it's a common structure, and we use the incident command system in the United States, which is a federal system, and pretty much all companies use that system. And the reason why is it allows interlinkages of business with government officials in any capacity, and we right size those incident command teams based on the incidents. So we're plugged in. We have parishes down here instead of counties, but at the parish level, the parish president has sort of a crisis management team. We sit on that team, as do some other big industry businesses down here, bigger employers, and we communicate what we're doing to them. We understand where the parish is at, what the parish president is looking at in terms of impacts to the community and expectations he has for businesses as well as residents. And then and using the ICS structure is something we train a lot of folks on at the site. So depending on your level and your role in that structure. And so there's a common structure as you get outside as you get out into the work world, in particular operating in businesses that have to run like a refinery or a manufacturing facility that may have these types of issues or broader public safety type issues or incidents. So that structure lends itself to be scalable, which is nice. So we can scale up and down, and we've done that with this event. Early on, we thought this was an event that was going to be localized to Asia, similar to the SARS epidemic years ago. And so we were watching it more from, hey, what's this going to mean for our supply chain? What does this mean for our plant in Singapore? How do we help our plant in Singapore? We actually shipped a lot of supplies to Singapore, which we later needed here. So we scaled up as this became a U.S. problem, and then we're trying to right size that now. We're getting to kind of a flat line. We're talking about returning to normal. What does normal mean for us? When is the government returning to normal? When is the stay-at-home orders going to be lifted, and how does that impact our business? And can we right size our crisis management team to adjust? And part of that is that team has been working through weekends and working long hours, trying to do their day job in addition to this. All this extra that comes with this issue and managing through this issue. So yeah, I guess at a high level, that's kind of where we're at, and just some kind of a real life boots on the ground kind of view of what you might be encountering in a business. And so we have all kinds of folks on site here and that are leading and playing a different role. We have people looking at masks, people looking at hand sanitizers. One of the early issues with hand sanitizers, kind of an odd thing, but you couldn't get your hands on it early on, and so we ended up buying stuff, and the stuff said "do not use on your skin," and so hand this out to employees, and they're like, "It says not to use it, and if I get it on my skin, to rinse it off immediately." And so it was another lesson learned in all of this. So we have industrial hygienists now looking at all the labels before we buy things, making sure it meets the standards and expectations of a disinfectant, as well as safe for use in terms of serving its purpose to be a hand sanitizer. The mask guidance has been all over the board if you've followed that through this event, which early on was don't use masks, they're kind of a waste, and then save the special masks for the first responders. And we've kind of gone almost full circle to everyone should be in a mask, and a lot of even the governments are saying stay-at-home orders lifted. If you step out of your house, you need a mask or a mask on, and then you have to define what mask is. And so mask can be is it a face covering? Is it a rated mask like an N95 where it actually has some scientific particle size that it's trying to remove? And so just issue by issue, as you go through this, how do you pay people who are out on quarantine? How do you pay people who are out because they're high risk and they don't have it, but you don't want them to be exposed? And so there's a lot of issues as you go through this, just pay issues, health issues, safety issues, and a lot of laws that prevent you from being open, and rightfully so, right, about health issues of employees. And you're trying to balance that with also trying to balance, communicating to the workforce a positive case. And so they want to know, who was it? Was I in contact with that person? And if you won't tell me who it is, how do I know you've traced them correctly? And so just a myriad of issues that really spans the board. It's a spectrum of possible things you could even conceive. And I'll say we're still getting surprised to some extent with some of the changes. We have test kits here now, and we're able to test our employees on site, which is great, with a kind of a quick 10-minute finger stick test. But we put those into practice this week, and that's kind of opened a whole new set of doors that we need to go explore and figure out and resolve quickly. And so maybe I'll stop there, pause there, and see if you have any questions you guys would like to ask. Maybe we can talk about crisis management or the COVID issue, and then we can open it up to any other subjects of interest. Yeah, well, it's a good question, right? So part of it is trying to provide paid time off. So we already have pretty good paid time off benefits. We have expanded those to the employees. So two, we've done a lot in terms of working from home. So initially when we started this, interestingly, we went to kind of like, we're going to try to have no shared offices. And then quickly went to, okay, everybody just work from home. So there's some benefits, a lot towards benefits, I would say. A lot towards just work environments. So certainly we've tried to change schedules in some cases. So like our whole maintenance department, actually, they used to work basically 5 days a week, and we went to 2 shifts, and they work 3 days a week, but longer hours. But we've limited the number of people on site at any given time. So we've tried to adjust schedules. We're also providing a lot of paid time off for childcare. So you can imagine with schools being closed in particular, employees were used to basically having a structure around, get the kids off to school, I go to work, they go to aftercare, I go pick them up, and all that shut down, right? So how do you enable employees to handle their family situation as well as continue to provide work and help out with work. And so we've done a lot in that space in terms of, in particular, trying to give them time off to deal with to be able to watch their kids and children. So yeah, just a few things, but we're PPEs now. I mean, that's sort of an expectation, I would say, but we certainly had to try to ramp up our PPE, whether it's providing more cleaning products and/or face masks, yeah, which has been the latest one. We provided temperature thermometers to every employee, so we could do interim checks during the day, ask them to do interim checks, and then we were gate screening as well. So trying to put in the right layers of protection for them. And then communication, I guess, is a lot of what it is people want to know, and that's really the hard part. Uncertainty drives a lot of the anxiety. It's that they don't know, and how do we provide answers for them? So we do a combination of communications. We do email communications. We actually do a call. We have a system that'll send auto text, so we do short text messages, and we do those daily. And then we've done some virtual town halls just like this. So the leadership team will get on, and we'll have 200 employees dial in and listen in, and then they can ask questions. We use Slido. I don't know if you guys ever use Slido, but we use the Slido app, and it's an online question. People vote on questions, so the most voted question moves up to the top, and try to give them. And we allow every question, so there's no. We don't restrict them. We don't filter them. We take the tough ones and the easy ones. That's a good question on the mental health. So we have a program that is already a benefit for Chevron employees. It's a mental health program that's included. So we've been advertising that a lot. I would say we can't force. Well, I guess there are situations we can force people to go that direction, but by and large, it's a self-nominating thing for employees to reach out to. And certainly, we're also trying to be mindful of stigmatism. So we had some concerns with employees who tested positive, and maybe other employees who didn't want that person around when they came back. So how do we set expectations for the workforce not to stigmatize, and also coach that employee on maybe how to communicate so they don't create fear in others along the way. But we have a program for mental health specifically, and we've tried to really push that during this time. And it is open to family members as well, direct family members of employees as well, because sometimes, it may not be the employee that has got the issue, but, the spouse of or significant other of that employee who's like, I don't want you to go to work. You're going to be the one that brings it home to us. And we're concerned about, so the concern isn't for that individual, but maybe that's another member of the household. And so we've been advertising that a lot. We've tried to get them on site. There are actually people in Chevron who do this for us, but because of their particular circumstances and the travel restrictions, we haven't been able to do that. So we've tried to also set up some virtual time where we could set up an office, and people who are on site in particular could go to that office and talk to someone live and express whatever concerns they have and seek any help that they need. But yeah, good question. Mental health is certainly a hot topic and a growing topic, I think, and in society and certainly in industry. You maybe, I don't know if it's surprising or not, but I think you find the big companies actually have quite a few benefits in the space, and they all learn from each other, and they're competing with each other for talent. So I was surprised actually how many of Chevron's benefits are very similar to Nike's benefits, for example, for employees. So I don't know what consultants we use or what industry groups we go to, but I feel like they're all leveraging. I would say that smaller employers are a lot more challenged to provide these types of benefits. And one of the challenges, I think, for the population at large is how do we help the smaller employers and/or businesses that really can't afford to provide these types of benefits to their workers. I like to tell everybody there's a spectrum I mean, you can imagine no two people are the same. And we had, I look at it like a bell curve. There's some people on the far right who were nervous about this thing before it ever became a thing, and have had a lot of issues and challenges, and perhaps with some of that anxiety comes some negativity. I still have people today who have this sort of Superman complex of this isn't really a thing, and/or it's not going to get me, and I'm kind of immune to this. And so we really see the full gamut of responses from folks. And that's a challenge because I want the people who are not afraid of this, they don't think social distancing is important or wearing a mask is important, all the safeguards we're putting in place. And so we're trying to push them to one direction, and then we're trying to talk the others off the ledge, so to speak. And we are trying to direct those folks to the EA, to mental health resources. And so we're trying to balance understanding, that everyone views this risk differently in their personal life, and it also depends a lot on their family situation. So a lot of people or employees have parents at home that maybe take care of their parents, and so that older population, as you can see in the news, is much more at risk from this than a younger population. So, but there's also people who have immunocompromised spouses or children that might be more at risk. And so you really see a huge range of, the full range, I would say, of expected outcomes or responses from people. And we do try to, as we engage one-on-one, be mindful of that and understand that, everyone's perceiving the risk differently than maybe I see it as a manager or as the business leader for my team. And then we try to make sure it's back to kind of stigmatism, like the mental health side is actually a challenge in some ways because people can view that as a weakness, or you've got problems, or you're being a kind of a wimp or something if you reach out and try to use those benefits. And so we also be mindful of making sure that that's private, and we make it available to people, and we're not in the loop once they reach out, so they don't contact back to supervisors or peers or anything like that. But yeah, we certainly see, as you may imagine with your friends too, you might probably see a wide range of how people respond, I would guess, and people who are worried and people who have no worries. Yeah, so I came right out of school to Chevron, and I actually started here at this plant that I'm at now. It was about 2 years in, and I had always thought about going to grad school, but I never really wanted to, I guess, stop working to go to school. So the MBA and I liked business, I guess. I was definitely, I was good at science and math, and I went into engineering, and I'm glad I did, but I always liked sort of that understanding the business side of things and how do businesses work, how do they make money, what's important, strategy and leadership. And so a guy had started with me, a coworker at the time. He and I had decided now was the time. I was about 2 years into my career at the time, and there's a good school down here, Tulane University, in particular for the business side. Chevron offers a good benefit to working for a master's or advanced degree, or even a bachelor's degree. As long as you're going towards a degree, they'll pay 75% of the cost of that schooling. And so I went at night, and I went for 3 years to get my MBA. And I didn't know at the time, to be honest with you, how it was going to help me. I figured it wasn't going to hurt me. It might open some doors. And I really enjoy learning new things. And so it was kind of just something I'd like to do. But I would say it's helped a lot. I would say the MBA for me, I didn't do any business classes when I was at Oregon State. I had one or two small ones in high school, but didn't have a lot of exposure, I would say, to the business side of things. For me, as an engineer at work, I was doing a lot of projects and trying to justify capital spend or spending dollars to invest in the business. And whether that's a payout-driven, financially driven project, or maybe a safety-driven project, and I was always justifying my spend and also trying to save the company money. And as I was going to get my MBA, it was really helpful it was something like every class I could take back right into the workplace. So I really enjoyed that because I could understand. So we talked about income statements. So I could look at Chevron's income statement. Like, so we talked about balance sheets. I understood how the inventory in our tanks sat on the balance sheet, and cash flow, and as we talked about org structures in business school and communication, all these things I could just easily, I had good examples that I could pull from, and I could take them right back to work. So I really enjoyed that. As I kind of was in engineering for about 5 years, almost 5 years, and I was ready to do something different. So I had an opportunity to go to research from there. And the MBA, again, was something very helpful because I was actually doing the business side of research. So I worked in a team that had a lot of like PhD chemists and engineers that would develop molecules, and they'd want to commercialize these molecules, and I would put those business cases together. So trying to understand, how many years it would take to commercialize, where would we build a plant or manufacturing unit, what would that look like, how much would it cost, where would I build it in the world, where are the raw materials readily available, who would I buy them from, what are they going to cost, how much volume do we need, and who's using the volume, and what benefit does it provide, is it patented, do we justify paying for the cost of patent it. And so it was really interesting. And then I also got interested in commercial negotiations, and so I really wanted to do some negotiating, so I lobbied to get a job in our procurement team, and that's when I moved to Houston so I could join that team. And we were actually contracting a lot of our manufacturing out to third parties who had specialty equipment and or could handle some of the unique small volume stuff that we were doing. So they really wanted an engineer who understood that kind of operation and then had some business background to do the contracting side of it. And so it was kind of a win-win. So really enjoyed that and getting kind of that commercial experience. So I'd say for me, it's really opened up a lot of doors, or giving me a little more breadth, I guess, than just being a technical kind of technical track my whole career. So I've kind of gone back and forth between technical roles now and commercial roles. And so for me, I guess I like being on that line, that fine line between the two, and that interface between the two. And so it's allowed me to do that. And I guess, it's been a big benefit for me in my career, as well as I think just for personal satisfaction as well, and achievement.
Were you still working full time while you were completing that MBA?
Yes, yeah, I was.
So how was that, trying to do both at the same time?
It was fun for a year, and then the other two not so much. It was a lot of work. I always tell people you got to do it before you get married, have kids, because I've seen people do it and they actually somehow survive it. But I don't know how they would. I don't think I could.
That was before you had kids, right?
It was before I had kids.
Yeah.
And but it was a lot of work. I mean, I would go to class twice a week for 3 hours in the evening after working full days, and then I would spend all weekend doing homework and case studies and projects. It was a great experience, and I certainly enjoyed it. I would do it. I would have done it again, but it would be certainly harder to do where I'm at now in life. So I do tell people that timing plays a role in a lot of this stuff. And as you go through life, you're going to have windows of opportunity, and you can take advantage of those. And not to say you can't ever do it later, but some points in life will be easier than others. All right, well, thanks everyone, and for the time and the questions. Thanks again, Kevin, for setting it up, and Tony and Kelly, great to see you guys. So wish you all the best at Oregon State, and go Beavs.
Go Beavs.
Go Beavs.
Thanks, Eric.
Thanks, you guys.
Bye. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Bye.